Hey guys, Jake here, and I'm wondering, does this situation sound familiar to you? You own, say, a PlayStation 4 and a smartphone, maybe a low-end laptop from many years ago that's barely usable, and you always hear on the internet about how great a lot of old racing games are, but you have no access to play them. You can run some old racing games like the older Need for Speed titles on your old computer, but you can't play a lot of the old exclusive games. A PC with the power to emulate those consoles might be completely out of your budget. So, what is a cheap, actually fairly straightforward way that you can play some old racing games? Ideally, you would be able to play them on your current console, but that is not the case. So, if you really want to play some old racing games, you have to go back just a little bit to a console that sold very well, has a bunch of racing classics on it, has great backward compatibility, and is cheap to pick up if you live in the US. Of course, the Xbox 360. These are probably among some of the classic racing games that people always talk about that you have little access to actually play. This is how many the Xbox 360 can play. And for context, this is how many the Xbox One can play. The Xbox 360, for the most part, has pretty great backward compatibility with original Xbox games. It's not perfect. For example, in Project Gotham Racing 2, there'll be audio issues in some races, and Burnout 2 slows down significantly when it's raining or snowing, which is a pretty major issue. But for the majority of games and the majority of situations, OG Xbox titles actually play very well. To my knowledge, Burnout 3 has pretty much no issues on the console, and I nearly completed the game on the 360 just fine. But of course, it isn't just about backward compatibility. This is about the 360 as well. The 360 plays so many racing games that we consider classic today. Now, to point out the cons, obviously this means you have to grab another system, you have to buy more controllers for it, etc. And you might wonder why I'm talking about the console when some games like the old Need for Speed games can be ran on pretty much any low-end computer these days. The thing is that the majority of these classic racing games that the 360 can play were never on PC. So therefore, if you don't have a PC or your PC can't really run many games, then the 360 would actually be pretty great. A 250GB Xbox 360 Slim or Xbox 360E, respectively, will cost you about $40 to $80. That is a massive decrease in price versus a PC that would probably be around an $800 to $1,200 build that could handle 7th generation emulation. And for a lot of people, that is absolutely going to make the deal. Now, what about the other 7th gen console, the PS3? The PS3's got some good racing games too. Of course, you can play the multi-plat games, the Need for Speed games, and the exclusives such as MotorStorm, Gran Turismo, and Ridge Racer 7. But with the PS3 Slim not having any PS2 backwards compatibility, and the backwards compatible PS3s being insanely expensive and unreliable, I really don't recommend one if you simply want to play the most racing games you can on one system. The Xbox 360 is a much better deal if you don't care about the PlayStation 3's exclusives. And now, what about a newer system, the Xbox One? In a poll I put out a little bit ago on my channel's community tab, when I asked what system was better for racing games versus PS4 and Xbox One, I got a split 50-50 response. And me, as someone who has had both consoles, I would highly recommend an Xbox One over PlayStation 4 if you want to play the most racing games. But the Xbox One still doesn't nearly play as many classic racing titles as the 360 does. But when we talk about classic racing games, people always like to bring up the PlayStation 2. So how is that by comparison? The PS2 offers Gran Turismo titles and other 6th generation games that the 360 can't play. However, the PS2 I think is much more stuck in the past because it uses a wired controller and the video output isn't that great. The 360 looks and plays much better today, despite it being technically old in age. So I think if you're coming from a newer console and you want to play a lot of older racing games, I think the 360 will be much easier to get used to. Now, I know buying an older console isn't an ideal solution for everyone, but it's much cheaper and simpler than building a high-end PC and emulating the games. But I know there's probably plenty of people that have a hard time accessing older racing games, especially PlayStation users that have no backwards compatibility at all. Heck, the only big 7th gen racing games that you can play on the PS4 are Burnout Paradise Remastered and Need for Speed Hot Pursuit Remastered. The Xbox One can certainly play more, but it's still missing a lot compared to what the 360 offers. And with the 360 being so cheap, I would recommend one to a lot of racing game fans. Anyways, I hope you found this video informative, and if you're interested in picking up a 360, let me know. Or if you think there's a better console for older racing games, let me know as well. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys later.
We'll be right back.